So I've been cooking and I've come up with this amazing Garen comp that is ridiculously fun to play, as every time Garen casts, he gets bigger and bigger in size. And with certain augments like Gargantuan Resolve or Hologram, then this comp can get even more wacky. And what's funny is that all of this footage is from before these huge buffs to Garen, which make him way tankier. So this comp will be way stronger going into the live patch of set 10. But what are the best Garen comps? What are his best items? And why is 8-bit bait for Garen Reroll? Before we get into that, remember to subscribe. So let's talk about Garen's traits. He has Sentinel and 8-bit. Of course, Sentinel is amazing for loads of tankiness, which free up your itemization options on Garen. But 8-bit is not that useful for Garen since his AD scaling only increases the damage he does and not his tankiness. So I find 8-bit to be completely pointless for Garen, but it can be useful if your backliners are either Corki or Caitlyn. So due to this stark difference in value from his traits, I always fully commit to vertical Sentinel and rarely invest into 8-bit. And by investing so heavily into Sentinel, you don't need any resistance items on Garen, so you can focus his itemization on enabling his healing and HP scaling. So what items should you give Garen to enable him? Well, I've come across the most success with a very specific item combination, that being Redemption, Dragon's Claw, and Archangels? What? Well, firstly, I believe Redemption and Dragon's Claw are a must due to his large HP pool. Since he has a lot of resistances and will gain a ton of AP, you want to give him as much sustain as possible. And that damage reduction from Redemption will further mitigate the damage he takes and make him substantially tankier and prevent him from getting bursted. Likewise, you're not building Dragon's Claw for the MR, but again, that healing. No other item gives flat max HP regen, and this max HP healing will be very significant once Garen has sufficiently scaled. This healing on Dragon's Claw is equivalent to Anima Visage, but Visage heals every second, which is far superior. Anima also gives more initial HP, which is more useful than the MR, but the bonus HP from Dragon's Claw will eventually outscale. Then the last item is an AP item, so Garen can get more and more HP as the combat prolongs. Ideally, this is Archangel's Staff, as it outscales every other source of AP, like Rabadon's Death Cap, by 10 seconds into combat. But Rabadon's is still fine if you get a couple of extra rods. After Rabadon, it's between Titans or Crown Guard. I personally favour Titans because it grants size, but of course that's a very silly reason. The Crown Guard shield will be very beefy alongside the bonus resistances from Sentinel. But let's also go over the other tank items. So generally with resistance items like Bramble and Stoneblade, it's a tad redundant because Sentinel already gives Garen a ton of resistances. But I am personally very torn on Heartsteel, because on average Garen could get far more damage reduction, thus more tankiness from this item than you would from Redemption. But of course Heartsteel doesn't offer any healing. Jak'Sho also seems very promising, but you'd only be building this item for the mana generation and not the tankiness. But I think this item can be fantastic if you have the fully adapted augment. Similarly, the only value I think you would get out of Vow is that shield if Garen gets low, but it really doesn't last that long. And while you can give Sunfire to Garen, I personally believe that another unit should be the anti-heal applier. Anyway, let's talk about the most important part of this video, and that's the comps you should play around Garen. So, as I said, with Garen, you go Vertical Sentinel and 8-bit isn't really a priority. But if you want to, you can play around units like Senna and Caitlyn, as they will have plenty of time to scale in the backline. You can also try to 3-star Senna as you roll for Garen, but I often find that she's contested, so I struggle to 3-star her. So your board would look something like this. But while finding Caitlyn at level 6 and 7 is more than possible, you're almost never going to be able to 2-star her until you're level 8. So Senna is a better carry until you're there. But you should also consider this board if you come across many Kaisers and Corkis and you're close to 3-starring them. But the biggest problem with this board is that Garen has to be a Sentinel headliner and you can only enable KDA at level 8. However, by far the best version of Garen Reroll is when you play around Seraphine, Ahri, KDA and Spell Weaver. Both KDA and Spell Weaver help kickstart Garen with the bonus HP and AP so he can snowball in tankiness much faster. And the primary reason why this board is better is that the backline will scale even without any items like Rageblade or Archangels, which is due to the Spell Weaver trait. And what's fantastic here is that all Sentinels have great AP scaling that increases their tankiness. Also, if you manage a 3-star Seraphine, then her healing synergizes incredibly well with Sentinels as they have to take more damage to lose that HP again due to their sheer resistances. This is also why I like Hextech Gunblade on Seraphine as you maximize her healing. This comp looks great at level 7, especially if Garen is a Sentinel headliner. And then, once you're level 8, you can play a true damage unit like Kiana. But while an 8-bit headliner Garen is suboptimal, it isn't the end of the world as you can enable 6 Sentinel at level 8 instead. Just take whatever you get, because it can't take too long to find the Sentinel version, and in the meantime you will have fallen really far behind in tempo. If you don't end up hitting Garen free, then you can move the items over to Mordekaiser, Echo or Blitzcrank. Mordekaiser in particular will deal far more damage with these items, but damage Mordekaiser really wants some Omnivamp as well. Ooh, and something I forgot to mention is that sometimes Garen will need time to scale. In some cases the enemy carry can burst Garen before he has time to ult several times. So in those cases I would recommend putting Garen behind your other Sentinels so he has adequate time to scale. But once Garen has scaled, he becomes unkillable. And that's the primary reason why I think this Garen comp will get nerfed. In some cases, Garen can out-sustain any and all damage he takes just because he has so much HP and healing. Lastly, I'll mention some augments that are amazing. Of course, reroll augments are nice to make it easier to hit your Garen 3, but augments you should always prioritize are those that grant CC immunity, as Garen will not have any due to his strict itemization. Indomitable Will in particular doesn't really seem like a silver augment. I mean, it's kinda crazy. And long distance powers will share Garen's huge AP and resistances with your carry and vice versa. This augment is particularly amazing when you have Spellweaver or multiple Archangels, as Garen will scale incredibly faster. And lastly, heavy hitters can give Garen an insane amount of AD and AP so he can reach absurd amounts of HP. And with this augment, Garen will be dealing a silly amount of damage, especially with the AD from the augment, but also the AP getting converted into more HP, which of course gets turned into more damage. But yeah, that's all the info I've collected on this comp so far. I'll play more of it when I can, but it's so hard to force comps in this set. But if you find out anything interesting, let me know. I for sure think this comp will be ridiculously fun in double up, especially if that massive Garen ganks your teammates board. But yeah, let me know what you think. How does this comp look? Will you try it? And if you did, how did it go? Let me know in the comments and remember to subscribe. Anyway, check out these other videos if you want to see more from me, and as always, thank you for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.